There is a question that has haunted human beings for thousands of years, and most people never even realize they are living the answer. What is actually yours? Not your house. Not your reputation. Not the opinion your boss holds of you in a boardroom 2 floors above your head. Not the love someone says they have for you. Not your health, which can be taken in a single afternoon. Not even your plans for tomorrow. Strip it all away. Take everything the world has given you. Take everything the world could take back. What remains? His name was Epictetus. He was born a slave. He was physically crippled. Some accounts say his master broke his leg deliberately as a demonstration of power. He owned nothing. He controlled nothing, not his body, not his freedom, not his circumstances. And yet history remembers him as one of the freest human beings who ever lived. This is not a story about suffering. It is a story about something far more radical. A truth so simple it sounds almost insulting, and so profound it can rearrange the architecture of your entire life. This is what Epictetus understood about control. Let us be honest for a moment about the world most of us are actually living in. We wake up and the first thing we do is check what other people think. Messages. Notifications. The invisible ledger of likes and reactions that quietly tells us how we are doing. We plan our days around avoiding discomfort. We contort our personalities to keep certain people from being disappointed in us. We make decisions not based on what we believe, but on what we imagine others will approve of. And then, because none of it ever quite works, we feel anxious, exhausted, vaguely out of control even when everything appears fine on the surface. Why? Because we are trying to control things that cannot be controlled. And we are neglecting the one thing that can. Think about what the average person spends their mental energy on in a single day. They worry about whether their email came across the right way. They replay conversations, adjusting words they said hours ago in an attempt to retroactively change how they were received. They rehearse arguments. They strategize about how to make someone like them more. They spiral into catastrophic thinking about outcomes that exist entirely in imagination. All of this, every single second of it, directed outward, toward things that were never theirs to command. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, wrote this 2,000 years ago, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And if anything, it is more true today than it has ever been." We live in an age of manufactured anxiety, an era where the entire architecture of technology is designed to keep your attention trapped in things beyond your control. Other people's lives. Other people's opinions. The endless scrolling performance of a world that wants your reaction more than it wants your presence. The result is a generation of people who are brilliant at performing strength, and utterly lost when it comes to possessing it. The philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome, people who lived through war, plague, exile, and execution, had something to say about exactly this. Epictetus began his most important work, the Enchiridion, which means simply handbook, with a single devastating observation. It is perhaps the most important sentence in all of Stoic philosophy. Some things are in our control and others are not. 6 words. And most people read them, nod politely and move on, because they think they already understand them. They don't. This is not a bumper sticker. This is a complete restructuring of how a human being should orient their entire existence. Epictetus called this the dichotomy of control. And he was precise about what falls on each side. In your control, your judgments, your desires, your intentions, your responses, the direction of your attention, what you choose to value, what you choose to pursue, the way you interpret what happens to you. Not in your control, your body, your reputation, your property, the behavior of other people, the outcomes of your actions, the weather of the external world. Notice what this means. The things you spend most of your energy on, what people think of you, whether your plans succeed, whether others behave the way you want, none of it was ever yours. It was always borrowed territory. And you have been fighting for land that could never belong to you. Epictetus did not say this to demoralize you. He said it to liberate you. Because here is what follows from this truth. If you stop pouring yourself into what you cannot control, you suddenly have an enormous reservoir of energy available for what you actually can. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who read Epictetus and built his entire inner life around these ideas, wrote this in his private journal, never intending another person to see it. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This was a man who commanded legions, who ruled an empire spanning 1,000,000 square miles, who had, by any ordinary measure, more external control than almost any human being in history. And yet he came back to this, every morning, because he understood that power over armies means nothing if you do not first have power over yourself. Let us go deeper. Because understanding the philosophy is one thing. Understanding why we resist it is another. The human brain is not built for equanimity. It is built for survival. And survival, for most of human history, meant being deeply attentive to the social environment, to what the tribe thought of you, to whether you were accepted or rejected, to the status signals constantly being broadcast by those around you. Social rejection for our ancestors was not merely uncomfortable. It was potentially lethal. A person cast out of the tribe did not survive the winter. So the brain evolved to treat social disapproval as a genuine threat, to flood the system with anxiety at the first sign that someone might think less of you. This is why seeking validation is not a character flaw. It is a biological inheritance. But here is where the problem begins. Our ancient hardware is now running in a modern environment. One where the tribe has been replaced by millions of strangers on the internet, and where signals of approval and rejection come not once a week around a campfire, but hundreds of times a day at the speed of a notification. The system was not designed for this. And so it breaks. The person who cannot stop checking their phone is not weak. They are running ancient software in a world it was never designed for. The person who cannot stop seeking reassurance is not pathetic. They are following programming that once kept their ancestors alive. What Epictetus understood, intuitively 2,000 years before neuroscience caught up, is that this programming must be examined. It must be brought into the light of conscious awareness and subjected to a very simple question. Is this within my control? If yes, engage with it fully. Give it everything you have. Work, persist, take responsibility, act with complete commitment. If no, and this is the harder path, release it. Not with gritted teeth and white knuckles. With understanding. With the recognition that your suffering does not change the outcome, and your peace does not abandon the effort. Seneca described this as the distinction between the archer and the arrow. The skilled archer does everything in their power to aim correctly. They study the wind, they steady their breath, they train for years to perfect their form. And then they release. What the arrow does after it leaves the bow is no longer the archer's domain. This is not passivity. This is the highest form of engagement, effort without attachment to outcome. So how do you actually live this? Not as a concept you agree with in the abstract, but as a practice that changes the texture of your daily existence? Here are the lessons Epictetus would teach. Lesson 1. Begin every morning with the dichotomy. Before you open your phone. Before you look at your calendar. Before you let the world pour its agenda into your mind, ask yourself one question. What is within my control today? Your attitude, your effort, your honesty, your focus, your choices. Then ask what is not. The economy, the traffic, the mood your colleague woke up in, the decision someone else is about to make about you. Let the first list be sacred. Pour yourself into it completely. Let the second list go, not once but every time your mind reaches for it throughout the day. Lesson 2. Use every obstacle as material. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not optimism. It is operational philosophy. When something goes wrong, when the outcome you wanted does not arrive, when someone treats you in a way you don't deserve, when circumstances turn against you, your only task is to ask, what is my response to this? What can I make of this? The external event is not yours. The response is entirely yours. This is where character lives, not in what happens to you but in what you do with it. Lesson 3. Stop performing. Start inhabiting. One of the deepest forms of suffering in the modern world is the exhaustion of constant performance, of showing a face to the world calibrated for approval rather than grown from truth. Epictetus taught that the wise person acts in accordance with their nature, not in accordance with the applause. They do the right thing in an empty room. They hold their standards when no one is watching. They are the same person whether they are praised or ignored. This is not arrogance. It is integrity, a word that comes from the Latin for wholeness. To be undivided. The same in every room you enter. Lesson 4. Train your attention like a muscle. Where your attention goes, your experience follows. This is perhaps the most practical application of Stoic philosophy. Epictetus taught his students to practice what he called prosoke, watchful attention. The practice of observing your own mind. Noticing when it has drifted toward the uncontrollable. Noticing when it has been hijacked by fear, by the desire for approval, by the endless rehearsal of imagined futures. And then, gently and without drama, returning it to the present. To what is yours. To what can be done. Every time you do this, you are building the most important capacity a human being can develop. The capacity to choose in real time where your mind goes. Lesson 5. Hold your preferences loosely. Epictetus drew a distinction between a wish and a demand. A wish says, I would prefer this outcome. A demand says, I require this outcome in order to be okay. The free person has preferences. They work toward them. They care about them. But they do not stake their inner peace on them. They hold what they want with an open hand, committed to the effort, released from the result. This is what allowed Epictetus, the slave, to be freer than his master. His master required external things in order to feel safe. Epictetus required nothing outside his own will. And so nothing outside his will could shake him. We live in a civilization that has made control its central obsession. We build systems to manage outcomes, technologies to predict the future, algorithms to shape behavior. And in all of this extraordinary effort to master the external world, we have quietly forgotten the only dominion that was ever actually ours. The kingdom of the self. Epictetus, born into chains, crippled by cruelty, stripped of every material possession, walked out of his circumstances carrying something his master never had and never could take. An inner life that was entirely his own. A set of values that no circumstance could corrupt. A way of meeting the world that did not depend on the world's cooperation. He was free. Radically, completely, permanently free. And so the question Epictetus leaves us with is not a comfortable one. It is not, how can I get more control over my life? It is this, what would your life look like if you stopped trying to control what was never yours, and started fully inhabiting what is? What decisions have you been avoiding because you couldn't guarantee the outcome? What relationships have you been performing in instead of living inside of? What version of yourself exists on the other side of releasing the uncontrollable? The Stoics did not promise a painless life. They promised something more valuable, a life in which pain no longer has the final word. A life in which the self, trained and tempered and finally its own, stands steady in the wind. Epictetus said it simply, the way he said everything. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. This is not resignation. This is the deepest form of courage available to a human being. Begin there. If this moved something in you, if any part of this felt like a truth you already knew but hadn't found words for, then you are already on the path. Subscribe to Warrior Philosophy. Every week we go deep into Stoicism, human psychology, and the ancient wisdom the modern world forgot. Not for easy answers. For harder questions, and the strength to sit with them. The war is internal. And it is worth fighting.